Epik Mellon Podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Epik Mellon Podcast, where we try to humanize the real people behind networks. My name is Jason Walls from QA Cafe, and today with me is Jody Botham from Brsk, BRSK, which is an ISP in the UK. And I've been working with him a lot lately, and wanted to have him on. So welcome. I'm glad you joined me on this Friday morning.
Yeah,
And
thanks for inviting me.
yeah, um, as usual, this podcast is brought to you by QA Cafe. So the opinions expressed by myself or Jody do not reflect those of QA Cafe or its ownership, and certainly not Brsk either.
Well said.
And as such, this podcast is brought to you through our 4 great products at QA Cafe. That includes the CD Router, the industry standard test platform for broadband gateways and Wi-Fi devices, with thousands of fully automated test cases so that you don't have to do it yourself and you can get on with your weekend because the testing is already running. And um, also Passport, which is our test platform for smart home devices and set-top boxes and other uh, uh, end user devices like that. A lot of the same stuff. And on the network analysis side, we have CloudShark, which helps you work together with your team on packet captures and store them securely, as well as Packet Viewer, which lets you take the power of CloudShark and put it into your own cloud managed networking solution or cybersecurity solution. And that is the short version. All right. So we talked a little bit just about about Brsk and stuff on when we chatted before, but I wanted to get a
Yeah,
little bit of your story about how it is that you got here, because very often it's not like the the story of a lot of the show is that we get into networking by accident. Some people do actually do it on purpose, but
yeah,
so you're head of networks at Brsk, right? And I imagine
yes,
that covers a range of things at all layers of the architecture.
yeah.
But I'm
So,
curious, like, how did you get into this in the first place?
um, so yeah, I definitely didn't get here in a straight line. So at Brisk, our team is responsible for network architecture. We're basically split into 4. So we've got the networks team, the platforms team, responsible for all the Linux servers and the infrastructure for monitoring, authentication, and a million things in between. NOC, who are supporting both the network and the customers on a daily basis. And then we've got some field engineers as well, so they're out installing new POPs, new capacity, upgrading backhaul, and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I started in the ISP industry in 2006. But prior to that, I used to be a builder. So I went from running a building company to starting in first line support at a
Oh, wow.
ISP. Then spent 13 years there, worked my way up to network architect. Um, did a bit of a stint in the cybersecurity industry, which was interesting. So that was a lot of, I worked for a vendor doing supporting critical national infrastructure. So things like power stations, water treatment plants. That was very eye opening. In that, some of the networks like smart substations and things that I just basically didn't even appreciate existed.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
right.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a big drive in the UK, at least, and elsewhere, for moving substations to being Ethernet based. Um,
Right.
so they're doing weird and wonderful things with layer 2 to, trip um, circuit breakers when they detect a fault, and this is now done over Ethernet, whereas traditionally it'd just be done over an actual physical wire.
Right, right,
Um,
right, right.
when I guess
Those
interesting is that,
good old control systems for you EE people out there.
yeah, well, I mean, some of it is like kind of, you've gone from there needs to be a physical cable which faults detected, you need to trigger that breaker in a very short space of time, otherwise, there's a
Before something blows up, right?
yeah, or someone gets harmed. And they're now doing that over Ethernet. So You need to ensure that that works, and then some of it's a little bit like, is this the best approach? They do get a lot of advantages from it as well, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, we all know how reliable networks can be in certain situations. So.
Right. Well, and this comes up as the topic a lot of like we try to sort of, not that there's a reason why IP networking is what it is, right? And Ethernet, and
Yeah,
like, but like trying to squash all use cases onto that like paradigm makes it so there's serious issues that you have to sort of uncover in
yeah,
ways
absolutely.
that could have been solved just by not doing it that way. But like,
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I was a builder from. So I started at that ISP when I was 25. From about 20 to 25, I've been a builder.
and you had your own
Pro-
company, you were saying?
yeah, my brother who's older than me, he'd been doing it for a number of years. I started labouring with him. Um,
Cool,
I actually, when I first started working with him, we actually had a contract installing playgrounds. So I used to go and
neat.
build timber playgrounds. That was my job for 3 years.
Right.
That was great. You build a playground, you be out in the sun, you get to test it after. Um, travel a lot. It was
Nice.
great. Um,
If it can handle a 25-pound man, then it must be safe.
yeah, exactly.
Or a 25-year-old man.
Yeah, so a lot of that was installing at pubs, schools. Yeah, brilliant job.
So
But
how did that shift happen then?
so when I left school, I got my first computer when I was about 4 or 5, Commodore 64, I think it was. Um,
Yes.
Taught myself how to program BASIC. Well, it came with a manual that told you how to use BASIC. I had things like a BBC, trying to remember the full name. There was a couple of versions, but I think they were made by Acorn. But it was a well-known computer in the UK because it was used with a lot of schools, so they provide them to
Hmm.
schools. And I'm not
Oh,
sure how
cool.
how far they spread out of the UK, but um, so I'd always been interested in computing. I got a PC when I was 11, 12. First thing I did was take it to bits, much to my mum's horror because she didn't think I'd put it back together again, but it was fine. Um, and then when I was at school, I always wanted to be a pilot. So went through school, went to college, did a couple of years there, got an A level in maths and computer studies. So I'd always got a background with computers, but then um, went off and started doing various different jobs, being a
Hmm.
milkman, being a bookie, um, worked in a pub,
Nice.
and then kind of I did some hardware support for a company, for a retail company for about 6 months, which honestly was soul destroying. Um, you know,
I can imagine. Like
family. Sorry, go on.
you say hardware support for retail, so was it like just a particular set of electronic products, or was it like,
So it's computers. So
yeah,
there's a Dixon Stores Group in the UK. They used to have a number of
yeah,
different shops: Curry's, PC World, Dixon's themselves, and we'd basically be the people that they call when the hard drive failed or it just stopped doing
mm.
what it
Oh,
um,
yeah,
did. And it was both. I learned a lot, um, but it was a very big company, and it quickly became clear that it was all even if the hard drive has failed, then you identified that by walking a customer through a set of steps.
right,
They'd do everything they could to not book an engineer. I mean, it's a business that's
right.
trying to make money, but it was there were people who were having to ring back tens of times, and they could be in a 45-minute queue. So once they've
Oof.
done this 4, 5, 6, 7 times, they're absolutely at the end of the tether by the time they even get through to you. And
Right.
then you look through the call notes and you're like, you know, 3 calls ago we should have actually booked an engineer. Um,
Right.
but yeah, it was still good experience. Taught me a lot about. They did actually have a really good initial training course. So dealing with customers, the public, whole week on things like empathy and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
took a lot of useful stuff from it. But then
Yeah, I worked for Best Buy over here,
yeah,
but I wasn't in support. I was actually in computer sales, but it was kind of the same experience because I interacted with those guys a lot.
yeah,
And just like you're right about it eventually being soul crushing. Not if there's anybody from Best Buy listening, not that it was not a great experience. It was an absolutely great experience. I loved all the people there. We had a lot of fun. But when after I left, right, to go work for at UNH for a computer networking laboratory called the Interoperability Laboratory,
yeah,
which I found out about because of somebody who was on Geek Squad. Uh, I years later, I saw the guy who was the general manager of the store that I was at, and like he was had a lesser position at another store, and I was like, really? Like you demote people in this place? Like what? Get out of here.
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't
I mean,
imagine why anyone would stick around for that long.
no, no, exactly. But yeah, so ended up leaving there after 6 months, just going, this is thanks, but no, I'm going to find something better to do. Ended up, I think I'm pretty sure I went because I was in between jobs because I'd left there without anything else. I was just like, no, I'm not even going to find anything else. I can't spend any more time here. Went and helped my brother out on a few jobs, and then kind of stayed. Ended up doing that for 6 years, and then running your own business, and particularly in the building trade, you're out on site all day, and then um, you've got you need to go and see customers. You're always trying to create more business for yourself, and it can get to silly days, 15,
Oh yeah.
14, 16 hour days.
No,
And I
it's
eventually
extremely
got to the point,
exhausting. Yeah.
yeah, and I got to the point where it's like, I just need a straightforward job for a bit. Um,
Right.
got in, was fortunate to get a first line support role with a company called As4, who were quite a young ISP at the minute. At that point, they specialised in student MDUs,
Oh, okay,
um,
cool, cool.
and then went from quite a small company to, I think by the time I left, they were serving about 350,000 students with their internet across UK, parts of Europe, so Poland, France. No, sorry, not France. Spain, Italy, Germany.
Right,
Um,
right.
that company got acquired a couple of times, and eventually decided to move on.
Cool.
And then
Yeah.
I
Did
ended up at Brsk in 2021 through a LinkedIn message.
See, everybody, LinkedIn actually works.
Yeah, so our CTO reached out to me, and he just agreed to join Brsk, and he wanted a head of networks. He kind of knew most of the UK ISP industry knows each other to some degree,
Yeah, yeah.
and reached out, asked if I was available and if I'd be interested, and met the founders who said, right, we're going to build to 1 million. We're starting a new fibre network. We're going to build past 1 million homes in the UK within 4 years, I think it was at that point.
Hmm.
Um, do you fancy a challenge? And 3 years in, we're at 700,000 homes. We'll hit 1 million by next year, and it's just been crazy.
That's cool. I saw some of the because I've been following Brisk on LinkedIn now, and so
Yeah.
I've seen some of the ads and some of the interviews with the customer interviews and stuff that you guys have been doing. It's neat.
Have you seen the
And
one where
actually,
have you seen the one where there's a customer dressed as a shark?
what?
We went to
I'm gonna
interview a
have to find that.
customer, and he's got a big shark outfit on.
It's perfect.
Yeah, just
You
but
just
yeah,
happened to have it on when you were in.
I think we pre-planned it, but I think we did. This was about a year ago. I think we did about five or six of these little videos, and
No, they were
they
cool.
they are really, quite amusing.
Well, so what I appreciate about that is actually getting that voice, right? And I wonder about did you do residential when you were doing the building company? Did you do any residential work, or was
Primarily
it more? Yeah,
residential, yeah, a little bit of
yeah,
commercial,
yeah.
but
So like in a weird way, do you now like know behind the scenes like the weird stupid things that might happen that are causing people to not be able to get like a cable to their house kind of?
yeah, and that's where I think having a varied work history does help because even though it's best part of 20 years ago now since I worked in that, you do take stuff from other, even if they're not directly related, you do take experience that does help you elsewhere.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it does. I've got a reasonable understanding of not just the technical issues, but the building, logistical, and everything in between. Really.
Yeah, yeah. And so like that's why I really appreciated listening to those videos because like I feel like we miss the weird. I don't want to say weird because it's not like the end user's fault that the end user's understanding of what it is they want and how it is that they experience it is not
Yeah,
good or bad, and it's not their fault really. It's just like how they interact with it, and at the end of the day, they just want something to come to their house that works, right?
absolutely. I mean,
But there
it's
could be any number of things in the way of that, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think we spoke about this before, but wireless, um, and the whole supporting customers that are primarily accessing service wirelessly is challenging
Hmm.
on multiple levels. And um, as you say, from their, they're just buying a service. For them, it should just work. Um, and yeah, you see lots of interesting things.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, internet's basically a utility now, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
you buy gas, you don't expect to have to know how that works either.
No, exactly. Right. Right. No, that's cool that it's being successful though. And so the you described to me before sort of the I guess it's political landscape, but like the relationship between the alt nets, you called them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And the incumbents. And it's a little similar. It's different terminology than we have in the US, but kind of the same thing of what happened. And that's really where Brsk is, and probably the one you were in before too, right? Or was that not a thing then?
so altnets have kind of been a thing for about the last 5, a little bit more years. Well, some of them have been around for about 10 years, but what's been there was a big explosion in altnets within the last few years. So we got up to above 100 in the UK.
Mhm.
There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on at the minute, so that's consolidating quite a bit. We've just merged ourselves with another large altnet. Um, but what made a lot of this happen is that the regulator in the UK forced the incumbent BT, who OpenReach are part of their group, to open up the physical infrastructure for sharing. So we use a product from them called PIA, which gives us
Okay.
access to their ducts, their poles. So it makes it much easier to roll out, fibre to the premises
Right.
because you don't have to do as much civils work. You can hang your fibre off a existing telegraph pole. So that's what's kind of enabled um, the big rise in outlets. And then that's also caused OpenReach to up their game, and now they're doing a large FTTP build, or that's the
Cool,
largest in the
cool.
UK. Before that, they were kind of dragging the heels quite a bit. We've got a huge copper um, legacy installation across the UK, and rather than moving to fibre for many years, they were just trying to push that copper further and further. So
Squeeze.
yeah, we ended up with like GFast deployments where they were doing 300 meg over copper on short loops. But that's died a death now, and fibre is now seen as the future.
That's cool. So is it a lot of basically kind of the same model that's being replicated elsewhere, where it's like, and again, because you said the end user is experiencing it wirelessly, so it's fiber to the home. But I guess you guys have you're serving a lot of areas where things are pretty dense. Is it different there, or
Yeah,
is it
we're
still
mostly
side of?
focused in cities at the minute. So we're building four
Yeah.
main regions. Um, financially it makes more sense to build where it's
Hmm.
denser. The build cost is lower, um, and there are companies that specialise in rural builds, but that's something we've avoided so far.
Right, 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 right. And I mean, you're right, it only makes sense.
Yeah,
But it sounds
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's working. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there have been and there continues to be some altnets that are struggling. Um,
Hmm.
3 years ago when we started, investors were looking to plough money into the altnet industry. Um,
Hmm.
with uh, interest rate rises and whatever in the last few years, then um, they're a lot more cautious,
Right,
and that's some of what's driving the consolidation.
right. Oh, I
So
see, I see. It was kind of like the honeymoon's over.
yeah, yeah, and I think you get the feeling that some of the altnets were looking to the the main thing that people were looking for initially was homes passed, and not necessarily focusing on getting customer uptake. We've always had a focus on customer uptake from day one. There's no point building a big network and then not actually having any revenue. Um,
Well,
but
everyone, we did it.
yeah, but I think there were some some people that thought you could just build out that fiber footprint and then sell it before you needed to actually get any customers. And maybe if the economy had not gone the way it has, well, at least in the UK, then that would have been more feasible. But
Right,
everybody has now flipped to we actually need some customers who's going to pay us some money.
right. Which is, it's funny that that's even it has to be a conversation.
Well, yeah,
It's like
but
you say that out loud. You're like, wait, oh, we need customers?
yeah, I mean, the world of finance is interesting at the best times, though. Isn't it?
It's totally bizarre. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you like it, right? It's definitely fulfilling at this point, right?
Oh, it's brilliant. As
Yeah.
obviously I'm primarily technically focused, but I get, we're given a lot. There's a lot of trust and a lot of responsibility within Brsk. So, um,
Hmm.
we deal with the financial side of things. We deal with um, I get to do wear a lot of hats and get involved with a lot of stuff.
I
So
was just gonna say, yeah, yeah. No, that's good. That's good. It's better than having to constantly repeat the same thing and just be in your own little silo, right? You get to
yeah,
sort of see, yeah. And
yeah,
I
and then
imagine it's pretty rewarding when you see things actually work. Like just being in technical marketing, it like having those customers do those videos is like the best thing that could possibly happen. But it's also super satisfying, right? Because you see people being like, "Oh yeah, this is someone actually talking about something I actually did," right?
yeah, absolutely, and yeah, it's not very often that you get within the ISP industry you get an opportunity to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Right, we're building
Oh
a new
yeah.
network. You get to design the architecture how the right way. Most of the well, what we perceive as the right way. Um, a lot of the time, you're walking into an existing network, and there's a load of legacy stuff that's not necessarily how you'd want it. Um,
Tangled things hanging on the walls.
yeah, yeah, core network equivalent of that, really. So yeah, and I'm sure we've made plenty of mistakes, but we've got a lot of experienced people on the team, and we've tried to approach things in a sensible, sustainable way. Um,
Right.
not complicate things. I think that's one of the big things that I've learned over the years is to actually, with technical things, is actually build the simplest thing you can that achieves what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
You see, with a lot of younger engineers, um, you know, they want to put every new technology into everything. Well, let's use this, and it's like
So
keep it
I,
simple.
I'm guilty of that because working in standards. you do end up sort of getting isolated from the real world a little bit.
Yeah,
So like, especially with, with with things like IPv6 and device management protocols like USP and stuff. I was like, why isn't anybody done this part yet? But then you're like, oh right, that's not how things work in the real world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I think that is something definitely, and we see it with the other people on our team. Is the more experience, like, right, you need to justify everything that's going into this because it's just adding complexity. It's making it less reliable.
Well,
Um,
and for just the nature of the beast, like if you're at no matter how big an ISP is, once you do something like that, like you're trying to do stuff that's going to be around for a while, so you don't have to constantly change it, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Or yeah, or at least is future proof in some capacity, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a great 3 years and never a dull moment.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's I appreciate that. Now I've said this often on the show that like, and maybe we can talk about this too about how things have changed since 2006 in terms of like the service provider market. But like obviously, when I was before I worked in this industry, just like everybody else, like, oh, those service providers, those guys, right?
Yeah,
And I never thought that I would be sort of a champion of now understanding what it is that everybody goes through in order to deliver
yeah,
broadband, right?
yeah, exactly.
It's
I
like,
mean, the reasons that we got in touch with you in the first place for CD router, that's um, it's that small piece of relatively cheap equipment in someone's home is so critical to the service that they get.
right,
Um,
right, right, right,
and it's one of the cheapest things on the network. We've invested
right.
however many millions in the core network, um, and that's great. But it's that unit in their home that's probably responsible for 99% of their experience.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I imagine being on the front lines of that, you're sort of seeing that evolve. And like I was saying, that was very different in 2006, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you see, I mean, you see the big service providers, your Liberty Globals and their brands, and your BTs, and the amount that they invest in CPE these days. Um, you know, building their own. People like Sky in the UK, they basically build their own CPE um,
Right.
based on what's it called? I forgot what the open platform's called that begins with R. Not the purple
RDK.
one. Yeah, yeah. So they built a platform based on top of that. And that's what's running a lot of CP now in the UK. Whereas I remember previously you just get a cheap Netgear and provided by the service provider, and you're on your own.
Right, right. Or not, right? Or not provided by the service provider.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's true.
There was a lot of resistance to that for a long time, you know? It's like, why do you need routing in your house? We're just gonna, and then there was that brief time where everybody thought that we were gonna go back in the other direction. I don't know if you ever experienced, if you experienced that, the dumb box theory, where people really wanted to do virtual network services and just have the
Oh
CPE be
yes,
really stupid, but it never happened.
no,
It was weird. Right, and I have a couple of theories as to why, but it's interesting because there was kind of a big push there. Because in a way, you can understand why it's attractive and why you would think it's right. Because does this thing really need to do that much? Can it be done elsewhere in the cloud? But it turns out that my theory is that just because the CPE were just because of basic Moore's law stuff, suddenly able to be very powerful and very cheap at the same time, right?
yeah,
And so you could just do a lot more with them, and it made no sense to push it elsewhere. Um, but and one of the things I wanted to ask you about, like, do you find do you find that experience from that box is sort of a core to the customer's understanding of the service that they're getting from you now, right? And that
absolutely.
that is sort of like the real psychological way that they're identifying with what they're getting from you guys.
Yeah, I mean, most people, or a large chunk of customers just equate Wi-Fi with being the service that they're buying from us.
Mhm.
That's what they refer to it as. I mean, my kids refer to it as, the Wi-Fi stopped working. If I say broadband or internet, they're like, well, what's that? Um, so yeah, I mean, there's an expectation that they pay us however many pounds per month, and they get flawless Wi-Fi throughout the house. If they're buying a gig package or a 500 meg package, why am I not getting 500 meg 3 floors up in the bathroom
Mhm. Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
on a
Through
10-year-old
concrete and
Android phone?
porcelain.
Yeah, and sometimes you're like, well, you're actually, you're getting 200 meg wirelessly. I mean, that's an amazing achievement. From a technological perspective, that's
Do you know what we've had to do?
yeah. Um, but yeah, they they see a figure and that's what they expect. And
Mhm.
a lot of the time, you're setting expectations with customers, and also, if they're watching Netflix, which requires 5 meg for HD, then 200 meg's great.
Yeah.
But they run a speed test, they see the 200 meg, and they're like, "I'm not getting what I paid."
Right, 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 right. And we've discussed this a couple times on the show, and I hate saying this out loud, right? About how much speed end users actually need versus just making sure that amount of bandwidth that they have is being delivered well and consistently, right?
Yeah,
And it's tough. And I don't know how often you end up interacting with the marketing decisions at Brisk, but like it is tough because having that number is so useful as a differentiator, right? It's very tough. It's tough to explain fuzzy things like reliability, right? Or
absolutely.
you
And
know, or
that's
fuzzy things like the best customer experience. Although there was that one guy in one of the videos I was watching where that's part of what he was talking about was just the customer support experience, right?
yeah,
So people are at least looking for that.
yeah. I think that's one of the differentiators with the altnets is that I don't know what it's like in the US. Probably similar, but a lot of the big providers, they've got really poor reputations for customer service,
Hmm.
um, and altnets tend to be able to do that better. Um, it's not perfect; there's still issues. At the end of the day, you've still got customer support people trying to support Wi-Fi, which is a horrifically complicated technology that it's kind of magic that it works at all. Um,
Don't tell Wojciech that. He's like, what? It's just a walkie-talkie.
yeah, one way of looking at it.
But no, it's black magic, right? It's black magic.
Yeah, and even for people that's been doing wired networking for years, I mean, it's just completely different concept. It's every frame is sent at a different speed. They're used to you plug cable in at gig or 10 gig or 100 gig, and it's working at that speed. It's like, well,
Hmm.
no, the
Hmm.
first part of the frame is sent at the preamble sent at one rate, and the next part of the frame sent at this rate, and then the act comes back at something else, and it's like, sorry, what? So the actual speed you get is some statistical average of what's just happened over the last 10
Right,
milliseconds or whatever.
right, right, right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the industry is set up to sell on speed, and I don't think anybody really understands how to tell the story about consistency and reliability.
Right.
Um, because as you say, that's the bit that actually works out whether you can watch Netflix 3 floors
Hmm.
up in your attic or whatever on your phone.
No, and
Um,
interestingly enough, so at the broadband forum, they did another survey through this one company, Omdia, they're kind of under the umbrella of what's the name of the company? The big one that hosts Network X, and they control all the
oh no,
tech
yeah,
media, light reading, and all that. Um, they're in that survey, or not in the survey, in the report, they actually included some data from other surveys they've done, and some of them were consumer surveys. And what was wild about that, because it was a survey that was done over a similar time period, what was wild was that cost was not the primary concern. It was
yeah,
like fourth down, right? And so number one was reliability. But then the next three were all kind of related, right? So like how you ask questions in surveys ends up painting the answer, right? So like
Absolutely.
there were a bunch that sort of hang together, right? So it was like speed, quality, reliability, but those are all really the same thing, right? And it was very apparent that people are willing to pay for money if it just friggin' works, right?
Yeah, and I think people do you know treat speed and reliability as the same thing.
Mhm.
Everybody just speedtest.net. That people go to that any sort of broadband issues or
It's a nightmare,
perceived
yeah.
issues, and it's only telling you a small part of the story.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I'd like to see some kind of some consumer friendly tools that actually quantify that better. And to be fair, we do
Hmm.
actually use one. Our CX team do actually um, use one where the customer installs an app on the phone, and then
Hmm.
they can go to the part in their home where they're having problems, and then they can run some tests. And it's running, speed tests throughput tests as part of it, but also jitter, latency, and also captures various parts of the Wi-Fi metrics depending on whether it's on Android or iOS and what they can actually
Hmm.
capture.
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
But then that's done as part of a interactive session, and the data is then made
Cool.
available to our agents. Um, which, but as part of that, it will say, it tries to measure the Wi-Fi speed independently of the actual internet speed, which is pretty neat, and it seems to be pretty accurate from what we've seen.
Oh, that's good. That's really that's what I need.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and
you're right. The only option I have is to run a speed test, right? I
yeah,
was hoping that there was at least some sort of app, because this happened the other day, right? Because I just got new repeaters, and I was sort of like redoing everything and making sure that they were still connecting to the new router and everything. I'm trying to triage the fact that our teenager is a gamer and she's in her room and she's connected wirelessly because we're not going to drill any more holes.
yeah,
And so and sometimes it sucks and I'm like, okay, well, let's figure this out. And I really really wanted to just have an app that just told me the Wi-Fi signal strength, like, but like they don't even, there was nothing that you can just buy on the app store that lets you do that because I mean, I don't know how it is on Android, but Apple locks down driver access pretty hard.
yeah,
So
yeah. So that is part of the issue. But I mean, so we've now got our own app that uses this system. So it's a white labeled app basically. But if you go to um, the Apple Store, then there is a Brisk Wi-Fi checker app,
oh
which is
cool.
basically this system. And one of the cool things that you can do some self tests, so it's not all um, interactive agent led. But one of those is it will give you a real time um, Wi-Fi speed graph, and as you walk round the house, you can see it change. But it'll also show you where you roam as well.
That's what I need.
So if you
Yeah.
change BSSID, so if you go from one mesh AP to another, then it will
Mhm.
actually show you that, which is pretty
Cool.
neat.
That's very neat. That's exactly what I need.
Yeah. So if you search Brisk on, assuming it's available in the US, then
Well, does it interact with you guys' systems at all, or can I literally
no,
just
not
use
unless
it?
you actually choose to open a sport ticket
Cool.
through it.
All right, I'll
So
try that out.
and all it does is sends us a PDF anyway.
Right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a system we bought in off someone else, but I think it came out of a university research project for
Oh, cool.
measuring Wi-Fi speed independently of the internet. Because the idea is that if you've got say 40 meg internet, but you're getting 300 meg over Wi-Fi, it should be able to show you that's the case. So you can see where the
Hmm.
bottleneck
Hmm.
is. Oh, it's your internet, or um, you've got 500 meg internet speed. You've got a 500 meg internet service, but you're only getting 230 meg over Wi-Fi, and that's the limiting factor.
Right, 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 right. But at the same time, it's
So
like maybe you should just plug a cable into. Yeah. So like
yeah,
our
for
our
some stuff, yeah,
PlayStation, which is our entertainment center, is our PlayStation, right? Uh, just finally got a PS5. It's right next to our gateway. So there's zero
There's
reason
no
whatsoever
excuse.
for us to connect that wirelessly.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. So um, measuring just the Wi-Fi difficulties versus the entire thing. Oh, I was talking about things being wired up directly when they
yeah,
possibly can, and I think that's probably something that not everybody realizes can be done or should be done. But
yeah. Well, it's just the vast majority of devices now that people are using just don't have a wired port anyway, do they? So,
right, right.
and we even find things. People don't necessarily want the router in; they want to hide it out of the way.
Which is really, 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 really annoying
From a
because
Wi-Fi
like
perspective,
that's
it's literally the worst
yeah,
thing you could do. But
right.
we our installers do try to guide people on where it's sensible, not sensible to have a router, but um, you they won't always follow that advice, or there might be reasons that they can't.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean that in itself can be challenging as well.
Which is
Um,
another weird psychological thing, right? Because it's like now there is a reason, right? An actual technical reason to make the CPE look good,
yeah,
right? Because then they will put it in a place that is good for Wi-Fi, right?
yes, some of the new CPU as well. I mean, there are some really nice designs. Some not what I'd consider nice, but I mean, I've seen a number recently that have got wood veneer on them, and um, there's all sorts where whereas a few years ago they were just a bright white blob or whatever. Um,
Like antennas. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, some of the high speed ones as well with the external antennas, like alien spiders, or but some people love them. They absolutely love them. So.
Dude, is there, do you find a differentiation at all? Are there like sort of different customers expecting different things, or is it pretty standard at this point?
Um, No, we find people wanting all sorts. In so we've used two different routers since we started. His first one was white, and his second one was black. And
Hmm.
you know, we've had people with issues with both colours. Um, so yeah, you're never going to be able to satisfy everybody, are you? But the key thing for us is identifying units that perform well and reliably. And
Right,
yeah, that can be a whole world of pain by itself.
right. And that's primarily the job of your testing department.
Yeah, so we don't have a separate testing department. It's part of the, it's networks,
Jody's like,
platforms, not.
it's just me, and like,
It has been for a bit. To be fair, one of our
yeah,
knock engineers who's now in platforms, he kind of uh, accidentally walked into being our CP firmware tester, and
right.
he was doing manual testing of firmware for a while, and it keep him tied up 2 to 3 weeks, just for a new firmware um, test, and some of the stuff that he had to build to try and emulate the network. And um, I don't need to tell you guys
I was gonna
how
say, I
painful
mean,
that gets. Given,
we do know how painful it is.
yeah,
If only there was a
uh,
thing. No,
yeah, absolutely. Um,
no, but in
so,
all seriousness, though, at QA Cafe anyway, probably about 80% of us came from a network testing laboratory nearby here. And so
yeah,
we are acutely aware of that, right? Because we used to have to do it, right? Because we
yeah,
we were students getting paid hourly, to do a lot of that stuff by hand. And eventually you just can't do that anymore.
no, no, exactly. We tried various ways of automating stuff. Some more successfully than others. But even just trying to replicate a throughput test. Try to do that in a consistent way where if you're running it from a laptop or whatever, depending on what your CPU is doing, iPerf will give you one result 1 minute and then another result another. It's like, I've not changed anything. I've run the same command.
Right,
And
right,
just
right,
because your
right,
email was downloading at the same time or whatever.
right.
Um, So yeah, we're in a much better place now, thanks to you guys.
Go, go.
And yeah, we are releasing a new product soon, and uh, with the first CPE that we put through CD router,
Cool.
and yeah, testing has gone really well and far less painful than it has been in the past, and we've
Good.
got a lot more confidence in the results that we've got out of that.
Good, good, good.
It's also been good to actually be able to send stuff to the vendors,
Right.
um,
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and say, we found this issue. This is what it
Go
looks
fix
like,
it.
and yeah, even just uh, even with like the performance testing, and when we say to vendor A, this is why we've picked vendor B over you because these are the test results we've got. Like, oh, when you say you've produced it with CD root or you test it with CD root, they don't tend to argue because they're like, oh, right, because they know it's a sensible way of
Right.
testing rather.
Yeah, yeah. Some are probably like, damn it. They
I think
tested it with
actually,
cedar.
well, I think a couple of the vendors that we were dealing with when we were going through the process while we we're picking one actually reached out to you guys.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
they are, but yeah,
Yeah. Oh, if you listen to the podcast that I did the 2 episodes ago, I think with Brian. I don't know if you've interacted with Brian at all. Um,
don't think so. No.
he uh he talks a little bit about that, about how one of the interesting things about working here, because our support team isn't just supporting CD router, it's supporting networking itself, right?
Yeah,
Right. So he's like, it's very odd when we're sort of being the middle people between between an ISP and their customer, because we don't want to like we're we have no business risking the quality of
yeah,
that deal.
yeah. So
It's
yeah, you're probably privy to both sides of the conversations at that point.
right. So we have to be like as factual and objective as humanly possible.
Yeah,
What was I going to ask about the new product? As much as you can go into it, because I don't know. I know you guys have a certain launch date, so I don't want you to like
yeah, yeah.
spill the beans on anything that, because you guys actually do have competition, I imagine. Um, so like, is that what if you can talk about it? Like, what is the thing that's going for that is new and latest and greatest? Is it just sort of the increased speed, reliability, blah 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 blah, or is there anything more to it than that? Or
So the product itself is, the customer facing product is an increased speed. Nothing particularly magical about that. But what we really wanted to do is, for that increased speed, we needed a different CPE because our current CPE doesn't have a, fast enough WAN port on it.
hmm
Um,
hmm
so we needed to pick a new CPE, but it's the way I kind of look at these sort of things is let's get the best performing CPE we can, um, and well, initially we'll use it with this new product, but the idea is that it'll filter down to the other packages as well over time.
right.
So this will be the base CPE for all our products. So even for people who are on 100 meg, as we've already said, if they're getting 50 meg at part of their home, um, then they perceive that as an issue. Whether
Right.
it actually is a real world issue or not. So the better the device you can get out there, the higher the Wi-Fi performance. You're just raising that average baseline performance, and
hmm
overall across all your packages, you reduce your support overhead, and hopefully have happier
Right.
customers.
Right. Right. Cool. Cool. And it seems like they are so far.
Yeah, obviously individual customers do get issues, and we will lose customers through um, the
Hold on.
performance or non-performance of our CP.
Right. Cool.
So
All right.
yeah, it's a massive decision to a company like us because that's kind of you know their experience of the services through that device.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and that is just the thing that I find totally fascinating as a user and as a person in the industry.
Yeah, and the people on our networks team are core network engineers, years experience working with MPLS networks and whatever. We build a network that's got 100 gig backbones, 400 gig backbone, depending on where it is. And all that's not worth anything if we put a poor device in the customer's property, which
Right,
then just
right.
writes off all that work that we've done effectively.
Yeah, right. And then on the flip side is the fact that a lot of internet services you can't even handle certain levels of speed, right? It's just totally irrelevant to them. So like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate, obviously, starting within the last few years with a lot of investment, and we've been able to build, a modern high spec network. It's
cool.
all XGS PON, so every property is connected at 10 gig. Um, and then, we're shaping people down to their actual package speed. Um,
Right.
but all that's for nothing if that device in someone's property is not performing well.
Right. Cool. All right, thank you. I I was I sort of as soon as we talked the first time, I was like, yeah, I should probably get Jody on.
No, it's been good. It's good to
Yeah,
talk to you.
no, it's fun. Um, so yeah, just check out. I really would encourage people who are interested in this sort of thing to check out some of Brisk's videos because it does put the human spin on a lot of this. At least that's what I found, and that
Yeah, the
is the part that
marketing
I
team are
find
great.
exciting.
It's
Yeah.
we they do give us a giggle from time to time. Um, but yeah, it's we've got good people across the business, experienced people, and it's nice to see kind of every department doing well.
Right, right,
Um,
right, right,
and that is easier when you're a newer company. But
right.
we've grown quickly, and uh, we've still got the right culture and everything internally, so it's a good place to work.
And it makes it satisfying to work there, and it makes it valuable to know that you've gotten into that industry when you get to experience those things, right?
Yeah,
All right. Um, thank you again, everybody. If you like hearing these stories, um, everybody, including my dad, who does listen to every single episode of this, uh, please do hit that subscribe button in YouTube or on your podcast platform, and that'll tell me that what I'm doing is worth it. And do check out, like I was saying, check out Brsk's videos. They're really cool. It it makes me happy as a person in the industry to see people actually talking about their experiences as end users, and above all, um, like ourselves, enjoy the nerdy things that you love and have fun doing them. Thanks, Jody.